October 14th, 2020. Okay. A roll call?
Certainly.
Here.
Mr. Lebenek?
Here.
Chairman Leary?
Here.
You have a quorum?
Okay. No public hearing items. We'll go to old business approval of the minutes of the September 9th meeting. We have a motion.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the minutes carry 6-0. The minutes of September 9th are official. Now, the next item is the carry forward of the education non-lapsing account for 2020 up to $1,963,779. This is per Connecticut State Statute 248A, unexpended educational funds account. Mr. Noel, would you like to address this, or? Let the record show that Mr. Cannellan and Mrs. Zanella are both here to address this item.
Thank you, Chairman Larry, for having us this evening. At your last meeting, there was some discussion about the fact that the line item has been created but has not been funded, and you asked for some backup information from the Board of Education to explain how we would utilize the funding of this account. And so you have a memo. What I'd like to do is walk you through the package of information. I know you got it electronically, and I also provided you hard copies this evening to make it a little bit easier to walk through. So the first item, hopefully you had an opportunity to read, was a memo from the superintendent, and then essentially a memo that I had written to the Board of Education members to walk through the items in this packet. So I'd like to do that with you now. So if you turn to the colored copy of the coronavirus relief funds, I'd first like to share with you some information in regards to grant funding that is available to the Board of Education. And I think the first number you heard about the coronavirus relief funds was the fact that we were going to be receiving just over $401,000, and that was back when we were notified on August 21st of 2020. Within a week of hearing that news, we were then told that there was an error in the calculation for transportation costs to districts throughout the state, and our dollar amount increased from the $401,000 to the $546,000. But as you can see in that second column, there was no funding for our PPE, which obviously was one of our greatest expenses in trying to reopen schools. Talking to colleagues, I realized that there had to be an issue there, and I reached back out to the State Department of Education, who then reached out to OPM and acknowledged that they had a misstep and they did not fund the $310,000 that we had put in. Well, we had put in our estimate for PPE, and they have funded $310,000 of that. So at this point, we are sitting with $856,076 that they have allocated in coronavirus relief funds. But I would like to draw your attention to the line item that says transportation. The way this grant was, the funding levels were determined was essentially based on a survey that they sent out to all Connecticut districts in mid-July. So bring yourself back to mid-July when nobody was quite sure what the opening of school was going to look like. And they essentially said, give us some estimates in this survey of your reopening costs. At that point in time, we had not decided what our reopening would look like. And there was serious conversations that the high school may open in a hybrid method of AM-PM schedule, where students would go to school every day, but only half a day, and we would need midday transportation for buses. So when we completed the survey, we put in funding for that midday transportation run. They have funded that, and however, we did not open up in that fashion. Our hybrid method at the high school is students are attending every other day. Therefore, we don't have the expense of the midday transportation. So the good news is we don't have the expense. The bad news is they have yet to determine how the reallocation of grant funds will be made. So we were just notified that they are now going to permit reallocation of this grant. So they essentially did it a little bit backwards than how most grants are done. Normally you write a grant application, you tell them how you need to use the funds, and they approve it or disapprove it. In this situation, after just completing a survey, they told us what the dollar amounts were, and then they asked us to complete the grant application. So we've completed the grant application, and we certainly let them know that we'd like to utilize all $856,000. And now they're going to give districts an opportunity to request revisions for certain line items. So we are not assured that they will agree that we can reallocate that $421,000 to other areas, but we're certainly hopeful that whether we can use it for PPE or hopefully for personnel costs in the district that we've had to add. So what I'd say is stay tuned. The next document is talking about the non-lapsing account specifically. And what I did is we provided 3 separate attachments. And so right now you can see a very rough draft of that $1.9 million would be that we have estimated reopening costs. I'll then talk about a subsidy to the food service program. And then the last item is capital projects, major projects, and equipment. As you know, last year when we came before you for the non-lapsing account for year-end 2019, we are very fortunate that we were able to bring to you an approved priority list of projects that the Board of Education wanted to fund. And of course, we'd love to be in the same situation if we could get $1.9 million of capital projects done. But right now, our priority has to be on covering the unanticipated costs of the reopening. So I'd like to draw your attention to the next page, which is attachment A. This is the expenditure summary that the Board of Education had seen as we were progressing through the process of getting ready to open up schools. So the first column was an estimate based on August 5th. We then revised that on September 3rd and revised it again just last week. And you can see from the bottom that we're sitting at just about $1.4 million of overall expenses for the reopening of schools. The majority of those costs are at the top third of the page under personnel. You'll see the added teachers that we had, added custodial coverage to make sure that contact surfaces, touch points were being cleaned regularly, added nursing staff to staff the isolation rooms, and then additional number of visits we were receiving in the nurse's office. And then that additional paraeducator time, which is really some time before and after school to allow social distancing with bus arrival and dismissal. Fortunately, some of that para cost will be covered under that transportation piece of that grant. You then see technology was a number of softwares that we had to purchase. And then you go down, and I stopped breaking out all of the different PPE specifics because they change every other day as we're placing additional orders, but I can assure you that I have backup documentation for all $230,000 that's sitting there. Then what we did is we tried to provide right now, based on the information we have today, how this $1.4 million could be funded. So we're confident under the Coronavirus Relief Fund that at least $286,000 of it right now could be funded by the way the grant was written. And we're going to be working down below on the reallocation request to move that over $400,000 transportation to other line items. And then if we're left with a shortfall, we either may have additional items that we need to order, or we'd have the opportunity to go back to look at orders that were placed last spring. The grant period runs from March of 2020 to December 31st of 2020. So although the funding was just literally approved with our grant application last week, you're able to go back through the grant application to get reimbursed for prior year expenses. In our thought process, we've gotten through the year-end closed, and so our priority right now is trying to fund as much of the 2021 budget that we can with the grant dollars and any unforeseen expenses that we'll have between now and December. But this grant will not cover expenses from January through June. So those added staff, the additional teachers we've hired right now, need to be covered elsewhere. It cannot be covered under this grant. So that leaves the last column right now as the non-lapsing fund. And as you can see right now, we'd be estimating if we don't have the ability to reallocate those grant funds, that we'd be sitting at just over $1.1 million that we would need to utilize from the non-lapsing account. The next document, which we labeled Attachment B, is essentially a summary of the situation that we are dealing with right now with our food service program. So as you know, in the spring, when school was shut down in mid-March, through the executive order of the governor, we were required to continue to pay all of our staff. but we lost our customer base. We are no longer selling food in schools. And the district operated under the summer seamless option for food, and we provided an opportunity for all of our families to receive and pick up meals at various school locations throughout the district, both breakfast and lunch. From March, we didn't miss a beat. We closed school on a Friday, and on that Monday, we are offering opportunities for meals. But from mid-March through June, we basically were giving away the food. You do get a reimbursement. I'll use ballpark numbers to make it easy for rounding. We get about $2.50 per lunch and $1.75 for breakfast. But as you can imagine, the number of meals we were giving out were limited. People weren't leaving their houses unless they needed food, and they were limiting, any interaction they were having. So although we were proud of the number of meals we served in the spring, it certainly did not cover our overhead for the program. So we finished the year with a loss of just over $337,000. Fast forward to the opening of school, where we have, I think it's still about 1,000 students that have chosen to be remote at this point. And having our students at the high school on the hybrid method, which are usually our best spenders when it comes to buying breakfast and lunch at school with excess money in their pockets for snacks, we basically have reduced that customer base by more than 50% with the hybrid method. And the school district is also continuing to participate in the seamless summer option, and therefore all students are receiving free breakfast and lunch. I am trying to do whatever I can, along with our food service director, Nia Walensky, to increase participation for both breakfast and lunch. The struggle we're having is many people feel that they shouldn't take something that they don't need or deserve. And so a family that believes that they can pay for their families to have breakfast and lunch don't want their students to receive what they're considering to be a free handout. What most families don't understand is that this program is going to get subsidized one way or the other. And it's either going to be funded through the federal government's reimbursement of the meals that we provide, or we're left with a shortfall and potentially need to do something to keep the program afloat. Many school districts throughout the state run their food service program with having to subsidize it. There's actually a line item in their Board of Ed operating budget to give money to that program. We've been very fortunate that the program has essentially run at a break-even point annually. It might have a $10,000 profit one year and a $10,000 loss one year. It really is that tight-knit for a profit and loss annually. So we're in a situation now where the cash balance is obviously very low. We're not giving out the number of meals that we had hoped, as much as we're trying to publicize the free breakfast and lunch option. And we still have quite a bit of overhead because of the way we're doing meal distributions in schools. We can't just open up the cafeteria and have all the kids come in. So if you consider the middle school, for example, we now have students getting meals in the library, in the band room, and in the cafeteria, which requires staffing. We also have students at the elementary level for social distancing. Some are eating in their classrooms. Picture a classroom with 3 rows. The middle row may go down and eat in the cafeteria, so the other 2 rows in the classroom can take off their masks and have lunch safely in their classroom. So we need meal delivery throughout the building. So we are working our best within the union contract to reduce our overhead, but we're really struggling. And so at this point, we've made a recommendation that we can, to infuse some dollars into the program to cover the overhead through the fall until the federal reimbursements come in. So when we'll be submitting the September claim essentially this week, but we won't actually get that money back from the federal government until mid-November. So that's a lot of payrolls and a lot of food to buy until any payment comes. I want to be upfront with you that I don't know that $300,000 is enough. $300,000, our thought is really it's just covering last year's loss, and we really don't know what the rest of the year is going to bring. So we're going to continue to make modifications, but it's very likely that by February or March, we may be back readjusting this draft front page of the $1.1 million, and with some hope that maybe it'll reduce for the COVID opening expenses if we can get more grant funding, but line 2 may increase because of money needed to go into the program. If you put money into the food service program, you can do it as a loan, but when you do it as a loan, you have to say right up front what the expectations are for repayment. And so in talking to the State Department of Ed, one of the things they recommend is you might do something like, we're loaning the program, for example, $300,000. If the program runs a profit of over X number of dollars, then they'd have to start paying back some of that money. So that's an option.
In the loan, who loans the money?
Well, that would be something we'd have to work out because right now the recommendation is that it be coming out of this non-lapsing account. So if they were able to pay it back, would it go back into this non-lapsing account and then allow us to do more projects? That would be part of the conversation. That would be a wonderful problem to have if they're able to start repaying some of the dollars. And then the last attachment we gave you is what we would have loved for this meeting to really be about. All of the projects that we would like to be considered at some point in time in the district. So this is a draft. It is not in priority order. And it's really just a way for us to show you of either items that are under the original budget amount that were approved as part of our capital plan or major projects and equipment last year and they weren't funded. And then we have some updated cost of those projects and some additional projects that we think are important. But at this point in time, we would not recommend to you that we would move forward with funding any of these projects. Our priority right now is making sure that we'd have the funds available for the reopening of school, the funds available to keep the food service program afloat, and then we would come back to you towards the end of the school year to say, here's where we are. And based on dollars left, now we'd like to talk about a recommendation of prioritized projects. And the very last page in your handout is to just give you an update on the non-lapsing funds from 2019, all of the projects that were able to be funded with those dollars. And the last three items in green were items that were below the line. There wasn't enough funding for those, and you'll remember last October and November in the conversation, we actually provided a list that was greater than the balance that was available. And those items in green are moved forward to the previous page now to be considered again. So I'll bring you back to that draft of the three line items as just a quick recap of the $1.9,063,779 that when I say it's a draft, it's because that 1.1 can fluctuate. We're hoping it can go down by grant funds. We anticipate the second line to go up, and we really don't know what will be left for the third line. But at this point in time, this is really the best information that I could provide to you. I'd be happy to take any questions.
I'll start. First is superintendent a few months ago.
Your microphone.
Yeah.
Sorry, thought I was. Sorry. Is it on? It's on. They said that there could be the possibility of some costs that needed to be pushed. I don't see that here.
So right now, we, do you want to take that?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yes, I'm pleasantly surprised. I thought we'd end up with
Yeah.
a much bigger sum.
Thank you. So am I. What's happened really is that I think our teams have done a tremendous job reaching out to families. There's been excellent dialogue between and among the special education teaching staff, the assistants, the coordinators, and the director, and our families. And our families they've been nothing short of fantastic, quite frankly. And people have worked very hard to try to meet the needs of students with disabilities, which is just incredibly difficult given what we're up against right now. So I do think that we're continuing to work on that, but I think that for the most part, folks are pretty, and by folks, I mean, I think our families and our teachers are pretty satisfied with the fact that they have been able to make as much contact and are delivering the type of instruction that we hope. Now, ironically enough, there is the allowance for families to choose full remote. Right, that was part of the whole state restructuring or reopening plan, and we do have a fairly high number of families who have children with disabilities who've chosen the full remote. That's pretty difficult to do. It really is. We did one of the costs you'll see on here. We did add personnel to do that in the form of special education teachers who were dealing, quite frankly, with fully with remote, and our teachers really have been amazing. They really have, and they've outdone themselves. It's just an incredibly difficult job, and I think they've done a fantastic job. Not easy to do, and it's pretty stressful, quite frankly, for all of them. But it's a really nice combined effort, and that's where we are at this point in time. I would have thought we might be in a slightly different place. I was a little concerned about that, but I think we're in a pretty good place with regard to that.
Great, yeah, thanks very much. I appreciate
So-
it. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I said that now. I probably just jinxed us, and the next time we talk, it'll be completely different.
Deal with it when the other quick question. Food service program. For the whole year? That's amount that could fund the whole year.
No, the 300,000? No. So as I said, last year we had a $337,000 loss.
Right, okay.
So right now, the thought process was that $300,000 is covering last year's loss and providing us some cash flow to get through the first few months of the year, to make payroll, to pay the invoices for food. And then we'll have a better idea. As we were preparing for this meeting, we hadn't even seen the first claims numbers for September yet. So once we really get to see what the participation numbers are for September and October, you look at something like the high school being closed for a week last week. That's, again, we lost the entire customer base. So we can't foresee what that will look like. We are trying not to fill vacancies when we have them so we can reallocate staff and things like that. But I'm fairly confident that the 300 is just the first infusion of dollars.
Got it, okay.
Yes, we do. They're coming to visit me too.
Absolutely.
Your request was first two items. Attachment B, sorry.
No, our request is to fund the full line item,
Okay.
and that we are providing documentation for you of really how we would, a phase-in of how we would use the dollars. So our first priority is the COVID reopening, the second reopening would be the food service, and the third, if any dollars are remaining, we'd come back with a prioritized project list.
We'd have to approve the full.
And you would do geography at some point
Absolutely.
between the buckets.
And we would certainly keep you updated as things change.
That happens, obviously. We work very closely with the carryover funds, with Sherry's office, Tim's office, hoping eventually Pete's office. But, so we'll be working very closely with that. So we'll be able to give you or myself, each of your meetings.
That's great. No, thank you very much.
A lot of details, great.
Yeah, let's do it now. So,
Then I will make that motion to,
I'll second that.
motion is second, any discussion? Kevin, are you
Did you have a
able to
comment, Kevin?
Okay, if there's no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Aye. You're opposed?
No,
Oh, you're,
Delayed.
that's a delayed, okay, so motion carries 6,
yeah.
okay, 6-0. All right, thank you.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you. I think that's the mute, unmute reaction. Take a minute.
That gets difficult. You can't get your.
Yeah.
Okay, next item, just let's talk about the current financial state of the town. So we'll start again with the revenue. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Board of
very
Ed.
much. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. First off, let me start with the tax collections. Mr. Shoda sent everybody the information from the our tax collector / assessor. Basically, through October 1st, we collected 55.76% of our revenue, which compares favorably to last year at this time, which was 55.05. So it's a slight bump from last year. We were a little lower through August, but then everybody kind of rallied and came in with the funds by October 1st, which is really great news for us. Looking at the other accounts, we're currently obviously 3 months into the year. Our prior year taxes are $40,000 under budget, and the interest on taxes are $70,000 under budget. But that's understandable given the deferment that we provided for the residents. We weren't charging them for any interest or late fees. So I anticipate that number will bounce up a little bit.
Why would that bounce up? Let me just understand this. If we offered no deferment at all,
Right.
you're saying there's a certain amount of people that don't pay their tax, pay it later, and then incur an
Interest.
fee.
Yes.
And there's a portion of properties that generate that.
Yes.
Just
Because.
a reminder that if they pay their taxes now,
Yes.
therefore.
So
Yep.
there's a penalty, so they had the grace period.
The deferment
If you
period.
miss the grace period, your interest is retroactive back to the initial
Correct.
point.
Yeah, and we clearly stated that so that people would understand it. On the other side of the coin, our building permit and fees are currently about $70,000 above budget. We did have a couple of large amounts. I believe it was about, I don't have that piece of paper, do I? Of course not. I believe it was about $65,000 for 2 permits for Economy Spring. That one hit in July and one in September. So that kind of added to our revenue for building. It was more like a one-time
Are permits
deal.
based on square footage or amount of money, the total cost?
Electrical.
The actual cost.
I think it's electrical and HVAC, yep. So in other words, the building department is very busy. We've gotten quite a bit of revenue from that. Likewise, town clerk fees are about $100,000 above budget for the first 3 months. Just to put that in perspective, if you look at the report, which of course, we're 25% into the year, and we've already hit 40% for building fees of our budget. And for the town clerk fees, we've hit 45%. So that's how busy those 2 departments have been. Now, with respect to our interest on investments, that's about $20,000 under budget. That was expected. The rates have dropped dramatically. You'll see some variance from month to month depending on the investments, because some of our investments, the interest is paid quarterly, some of it's monthly, some of it's annually. So based on that, it varies from month to month. And then the other thing is that we had over budgeted on the Kerma equity, and it came in about $44,000 lower than we had budget. It's just the way it worked out this year. So we're pretty much on even keel with the revenues overall. I have a $4,000 reduction, but it's pretty much, we'll just say we're at budget at this point overall with the revenues. Any questions?
Come back to you.
Yes.
So, have we got any other? It would seem to suggest that we were okay financially. Do we have any other pieces of information? I mean, any.
What we
That
should
brand
watch
list
out
would be
for,
good.
basically, what we should be aware of going
Is there
forward?
anything else? I mean, because it looks like, if it goes on like this, then.
I think that the residents have been, as Mrs. Babin indicated, that that some of the individuals wanted to pay both their halves of their taxes. In other words, they prepaid their January taxes because they were concerned that things would get worse, right? So they paid both. They paid their entire tax bills for
But
real estate.
Just to put an asterisk on that, remember, the courts have stopped everything in foreclosures and things like that.
Oh, that's
So-
right,
Sure.
yeah.
So
Yes,
that
you
being
wouldn't
step
know.
number one, so you're not going to see that. Have the closing account. We will be affected eventually. I think that this was much better news from tax collection than I.
Sure. Okay, with respect to our expenditures, we're going along well with the expenditures. The only thing that you'll see is that our emergency management department will show an over expenditure because we're trying to keep all the expenses in the same area. We have applied for FEMA grant. It's quite a bear to get through, to say the least. My assistant has spent quite a lot of time applying for the FEMA grant and trying to get some feedback from them, indicating what's acceptable. And this is only the first quarter. This is still that we're working on. So now they're giving her some direction so that she can take the information and reapply. So it's definitely not an easy process. And then once they respond to us, then we can submit to CRF for the other 25%. So, and they wanted us to do this on a quarterly basis. And I think most people haven't received the responses from their first quarter yet, which ended in June 30th. So they keep extending the time frame that you could apply. But anyway, that's as far as the expenditures go, that's the area, would be the emergency management stuff with respect to COVID. That's the expenses that we've included there. And then you'll see today the expenses associated with the election and the absentee ballots, which is another large number that will be funded both with grants and we're going to be requesting for some town money to also help along. And unfortunately, this is something we have to handle at this meeting because obviously the election's right around the corner and we really need the extra help and everybody getting this work done. Any questions? You're welcome. And as for the capital, I'm still working on finalizing the old year for the audit. So I'm going to put that off hopefully until next month. The capital projects budget. Okay?
Let's go through our committee reports, the sewer committee, Mr. Morrison.
Yeah, sure.
Closer. Yeah, the project's 88% complete, judging by invoicing, although obviously a lot of work that won't involve invoicing, and the completion date is still next July. We did pass 2 large orders. Valid in the sense stuff that you wouldn't have known about before the bid, but once you get into the work, you realize that certain things at the time. So, for instance, the sludge tank they found a lot. Which wasn't known at the time because you couldn't see the walls. So, especially if they had to do the floor. So we added those, and that puts us up to 3% on the contingency, and allowable 5% contingency. Incomplete, obviously, we're going to come in nicely. Budget. At this point, it looks that way.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, all right. I did say at this point. But two things are under budget. They finally finished. So I thought I'd mention the South End pump station improvement. PO was for $540,000 lower. You know, it is what you would expect, but it's nice to have some money left over. Actually, pump station that was eliminated. There was a PO cut for 120K for the bid from Tomato Construction for 97. Work came in at 94,470, which meant that 26K. The projects come along. I mean, judging by these, guys have a history of correctly specking out the projects and then coming in a little bit under, which is what I told them I'd so this is going really well.
Next one, Public Works, Mr. Polk.
Tracking system. Everybody's home to bringing it in. Leaves, starting on November the 2nd. It starts in the northeast quadrant and then goes around from there. We also received more bids for snow removal than normal, and bids was discussed. Included that local contractors would there's good. Oh, I'm sorry. There will be a household hazardous waste pickup. 7th in Bristol. Probably try to have one in our COVID and funding.
Yes, those of you who know the horse farm.
hot, the irons in the fire. A lot of other properties, I've been.
Okay.
Just sorry, a quick question. Is there anything the town can do? You know, the Catholic cemetery. Is there anything that can be done about that? Because that's, you know, the Caribbean farms some of it at the moment. It's a nice, probably one of the biggest home spaces in left in
There's
town.
currently a petition in front of the siting council. Lawyer read a letter. Concern was most people. Property,
Right.
but
Just so you, then we have an abutting property next door to that. So,
Oh, okay.
you got an entry. That's pretty good large parcel.
very much.
A lot of factors in that.
Mr. Bedoin.
So far, results through August, so August was another good month. We were almost 300,000 budget. So we're now 830 here. That's about 20. I think one interesting thing we'll look at the next meeting is August was below budget, but actually versus prior year, August it was At our last meeting, we talked about the funding split between proper number to budget, how we look at following year. And again, that's really going to be the challenge, I think, is well, I mean, here's the thing. It's tough to know for sure. One thing I'll point to is, so we were $300,000 under budget for August. However, we were on the same. I think we had, if I was looking back, and I think we might have had a big 2018 August. And I know you usually average 3 years. So I think even before that was only 1.5. We were haven't been. August was kind of the first month in a while that we've been trend, whether that was,
Okay, nothing on the committee of the chairs. Anything on economic strike, Mr. Morrison?
Not really, in the sense that the actions be marketing campaigns. A couple of times. It actually looks pretty good. Private business. Actually, I don't think you're right. But also to encourage, tourism.
Everything, it's just getting people in for purposes.
Right.
Not just to develop commercially,
Oh, no,
industrially,
no.
or targeting a particular property here or there.
It's to market it as they've got some really good ideas. I think we'll need to, after today, they had a, they've already produced 2 iterations.
For the public.
Oh, for the public, I would say that would be another. That's why, it's incumbent upon us now. Really good ideas, actually. So far, what they've come up with.
All right, anything else? Anybody like to bring up? Board communications, anything we?
We're going to do the rating presentation on Friday. So we're looking to refund anywhere between $22 and $30 million worth of bonds and clean water funds. We still haven't heard from the state, so right now we're just moving forward with the bonds. The 2011 issue, 2014, I didn't bring my paperwork, but I just wanted to give you guys the 11, 12, and 14. So those are the issues that we're looking at refunding, and we're hoping to get a little over $1 million in savings over the next 12 years. So because we're doing an advance refunding and we can't do it on a tax-exempt basis, for a portion of it, we're going to do taxable bonds for that portion. So we're actually doing some tax-exempt bonds and some taxable bonds. But it should... if things continue, obviously, and we complete this this transaction, we should save a little bit over $1 million, is what
So
we're
not all
looking at.
municipal bonds are tax exempt.
Correct. A while back, the legislature included in one of their bills, I guess, that we can no longer do advance refundings on a tax-exempt basis. So that kind of put the kibosh on the advance refundings that we were doing, which means basically that you were doing it well ahead of the bonding period being up for you to be able to recall it. But now, because we're in a very unusual situation where our taxable rates are so close to our tax exempt rates, they're so low. I don't think we've ever seen this in the last, I don't know, what did Matt say, 30 years, 40 years? At least. That
Historic lows.
it's giving us an opportunity to refund on a taxable basis and still get over $1 million worth of savings. So we're pretty excited about that. We have the rating presentation on Friday, and I forget what the date is on the sale, but it's before, I think it's at the end of the month. Yeah.
Last week of October.
I
Right.
said 11 million over the next 12 years, so
No. All right. Tony, you're cute.
1 million over the next.
Yeah, a little over a million, hopefully a little bit over $1 million over the last 12. I would like that a lot, but unfortunately,
So this is the good news for all you people who can't find any place to put your money and earn any interest. This is the good news part. We can refinance for that.
I figured we'd like some good news, so.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, with your indulgence, obviously, we did not meet before the next talk about anything on the ballot. One thing. Remember, there's a question on the ballot. It's a very important question. I know that I spoke about it at the council meeting. Side is a pamphlet explaining the fact that taxpayer money this year, if you look at the program, I think it was very hoping that the public will certainly back that and vote question, which is their case. I think that everybody, this is this board, but the town council and the
Very good.
I have them in my office.
Could you could link to it? Because I did see some thread out there where there were some folks on Facebook, and again, a limited amount. They were saying, what is, because they're voting early, they get the absentee ballot, and they're saying, right, so we need, as long as we could find it, link to it, they could have a little bit more.
Yeah, if you have any questions at all, please.
Comment I'd like to make, I did put in a question to Mr. Baker. I looked at it. Being older, I have to put on my glasses to look at everything, but even with the glasses, I found some of the types small and hard to read. Responded that there is a little icon of a human being, and it's in blue in the lower left corner. For anyone who has trouble reading it, click on that icon. You can enlarge the type, and there are some other things on there, along with that little, I call it a little man. He's not wearing a skirt, so usually that means a little man in symbolism. So this little man has a lot of little things that he can do to help you. So if you have any difficulties with reading or accessing the site, click on that little image, and it will give you a lot of help. It really helped me a lot.
Good to
So
know.
thank
And
you
it's
to
also
Mr. Baker
in,
for that.
I believe, 67 different languages.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in 67 different languages. I believe it's maybe more than that, but I think it's 67 different languages.
Yeah,
I was scared to
look
click
right
on
There
it.
should be a box to the right.
Yeah, it's awesome.
There's a box to the right saying press on that.
On an iPad, those things don't all show up. So on your phones and everything, they don't all
The
explain
reason
everything.
the reason
so-
why I used you all for guinea pigs on Friday, I sent it to you and the town council to go through it, because Jay and I spent most of Monday going, Tuesday, Tuesday, going through all those emails to figure out where we were. Overall, it was a very positive results from both this board.
Okay,
Oh, by the way, just on that, out on social media, I think it's
Wish, on your way out, stop by my office, I'll give you some pamphlets. Probably already posted everywhere in town, but, and all your family functions from now until election day.
okay, now we could open the line for any public communications. Okay, just us. All right, so 3 items on the consent agenda. Let's see if we can take them A, B, and C all together.
Looks good.
First one's an appropriation for $6,550 to town clerk for the nominee fee program services. Item B, appropriation $6,708, town clerk, CTCL, Safe Elections Grant. And item number C, appropriation $13,416, election, CTCL, Safe Election Grant.
Zuckerberg.
250.
Mark was here the other day, wrote a couple of checks. No,
All right.
no,
Why did you
actually,
tell us?
actually, there was an email that both Kathy and Michael both applied. Kudos to them.
Yes.
They're gonna have a lot of the work to do. Okay, can we take all three of those in one motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You gotta skip a beat on them.
I gotta skip a beat, so that, I figure it's a 6-0.
Yes, it is.
Okay, next, we have two manager memos, both appropriations. One is an appropriation of $20,000 to emergency management to the town clerk's office for COVID. We'll start with that one.
Emergency management is the actual line item, but Amelia, would you cover the recent?
We'll just stay there and do the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, these are interrelated, obviously.
Let's take them together.
Same thing.
The second one's an appropriation for $30,000, emergency management elections due to the COVID.
Correct. So basically, both the elections department and town clerks are going to need additional funding for the safe polls, for the absentee ballots, for the not only the supplies but also the personnel to handle the polls as well as handling the absentee ballots. Just to give you an idea. We did one PO for ballots, and it was almost $20,000. That was just one item. So this is going to be a costly thing. We've managed to get some grant money from the state, which was at the last meeting, which was almost 40,000. Yep, it was about $37,000. Yeah, a little under 40. And then we have this money from Mark Zuckerberg, which was another 20,000. I'm sorry.
Richest guy in the world.
I wish.
Know how to pronounce his name.
I can't pronounce his name. What can I tell you? There's certain things. So now we're looking at another 30,000 for elections and 20,000 for town clerk. It's just basically an estimate, but because we need to get this done immediately, we don't have the luxury of waiting until we get a better number. We are going to need quite a few people working to get all this done on a timely basis. So that's why we're asking for those appropriations from contingency, and both departments are very good at managing their budgets, and we're very confident that any monies that they do not use will be turned back to the town.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, when added, it has to be done. Clerk's department is always one of our business. They were given this task, nothing they asked. Sitting here in the audience, incredibly hard. They're next to me. For people she had to hire on a part-time basis just to keep up with the time frame set forth. Vision. This was a task that all municipalities are having very difficult. Say that shift hours. Obviously, we had to cut down on the hours on the clerk's office to open to the public because we could have. Departments are doing as well as any.
People have the right to or have the desire to trust the election, that what they do, whether they vote in person or whether they vote absentee, that somehow it's all going to be sorted, and their vote and everybody else's vote is going to somehow make it in properly all around the country to become the proper vote. And I know so much work in ensuring that. So I too, thank the clerk's office, thank the election group, and everybody else who stepped up to make our polls COVID compliant and safe, and handling all those absentee ballots, which is not the norm.
No.
Making sure that nobody votes twice and all the checks and balances, it's got to be a daunting task, and until you do it, you don't know. You really don't know, but I just appreciation out too.
Mark, is there any?
Thank you.
It's quite a considerable sum. Double checking to make sure people. Are there any holes in this? People essentially could. Kathy Sue? Enough.
I think that obviously we are going to be doing something.
That's what worries.
In my tenure, and I don't think ever, is the fact that we're going to have more ballots through the. We hope there's no very close election. That's our goal, but something that, in my presidential elections, people in Southington who vote, but I do believe. Well, this is a double whammy, obviously. This was something that a lot of.
Okay, so let's have a motion for manager memo number 1, 20,000 for emergency management.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, first one carries 6-0. Second one, appropriation 30,000, emergency management elections.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Show the delay. Okay, Kevin, you can make our favorite motion. Yeah,
Second.
at 8:04. Seconded by Mrs. Zoni. All in favor?
Aye.
It carries. Meeting ends at 8:04.